Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio, this is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Hour 2, Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show, working towards the weekend. Chris Blair, voice of the Tigers, 15 minutes from right now. He'll be on the call all weekend long for the Super Regional between LSU and West Virginia. We talked a ton about that in the first hour. We'll do it a little bit more with Chris here in 15 minutes. So let's talk about the latest update in this Derek Carr saga. He did speak on the record, finally. It wasn't in a church service or through his brother or cryptically on social media. He spoke with Front Office Sports about his departure from the Saints. The retirement papers were filed on Tuesday, and things can move forward. But I do think that there's a development in this story because of the quote. And the biggest deal was that Carr got his $10 million roster bonus, but he forfeited the $30 million in guaranteed money that had been restructured, and that goes back to the Saints. And everybody's looking at that going, $30 million? Who walks away from $30 million? And Carr's got a quote on it. It says, "That part was tough because I didn't want to have surgery and just sit there. It sounds crazy, but just take the Saints' money. I never played just for the money. I had a whole bunch of people tell me how crazy it was, and man, I would have never done that. And that's all cool, but I've gained all these things and the world has to offer, and it doesn't really do anything for your heart. I knew my heart was at peace, and that's really all that mattered." Okay, so let me take all of this information and give you the possibility if Derek Carr is actually telling the truth, which he may be, he may not be, but this is a possibility. You can doubt it and hate it and yell and scream about it all you want. It is a possibility that Derek Carr signed a contract, played the first couple of years, got hurt, needed to have surgery, said, okay, I have the surgery, I'm not going to play, and the Saints will have to pay me $30 million. It's not really fair to the Saints if I'm not playing, and if I don't have the surgery, I can play, but I won't be very good, and that's kind of taking their money too and putting me at risk, and I can just take the $10 million right off into the sunset, and look, I've made 196 in my career. I don't need the $30 million. I can just move on, and that's what I'm going to do. Like that is a real possibility. You can decide if it's 90% likely that happened or 4% likely that happened. It is a real possibility. What I struggle with is when Kat Terrell asked Derek Carr after last season if he would take a pay cut, which would ultimately help the Saints as far as their salary cap goes, decrease the amount of money he was earning, spread it out amongst the roster to try to get better. Derek Carr was adamant and immediately direct in saying, no, I would not take a pay cut. Feel like I've played well. That's the contract. So no. And so for him to say I've never played for the money in this quote, and then when asked about playing for less money, say I'm not going to do that, well, now all of a sudden we've got a little bit of a contradiction. Now, y'all know my personality. I think that one of these personality tests that we do at Guarantee that lays out kind of the way your mind works, and we talk about it once a quarter around here. I'm this Enneagram number 9, and it forces me to often look at both sides of an issue. And I think that's probably a hindrance to the great talk show guy that just, man, takes a point and he's saying, I'm right, you're wrong, here it comes, and that's not my nature. But I also think that at times it allows me to analyze both sides of the situation instead of planting my flag in the ground and saying, I'm right, you're wrong. So on this instance, let me look at that contradiction that says I never played for the money, but on the other hand, I'm not taking a pay cut. And let me just try to go, okay, well, he's not taking a pay cut if he's the starting quarterback of the Saints and he's out there for 17 games and he's waking up early and doing film study and going to practice and leading the team and running film sessions and doing extra drills and the OTAs and the mini camps, and if he's doing that, he's getting what he signed for. And if he's not, which is the instance now, well, I don't deserve that. It's possible. It just seems far-fetched. Is that fair to say? I have thought a lot of the way Derek Carr has handled himself as the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints until about December. And something changed with his messaging, with the communication outwardly in the media and with the team, with the cryptic stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And now David Carr's talking, and now there's a church deal, and now we got Carr reviews on the internet, and now we're retiring all of a sudden, and now there's money involved, and we'll take and like, I don't know enough to bang this desk and go, Derek Carr is a liar. He thinks the Saints are going to sue him. That's why he's given the $30 million. But like, I don't know that. That sounds fun to Joe Saints fan who detests Derek Carr and wants to jump in and say anything they possibly can negatively about Derek Carr. It sounds fun. To me, personally, with the information that Hunt Palmer has to this day, it would be irresponsible for me to get here and do that. Irresponsible, because I don't know it to be true. Again, I'm not backing Derek Carr and going, clearly the guy's salt of the earth. Signed a contract. If he's played, he's going to take the contract. If he's not going to take the contract. Like, I don't know. What appears evident to me with context clues and connecting dots and looking at this whole situation, which was obviously just a complete failure, is that something has eroded and deteriorated between the organization and Derek Carr since the fall. Call it September, call it December, whatever. And that's why Derek Carr is saying these things. And that's why Mickey Loomis, when asked about Derek Carr, when he hadn't said anything about Derek Carr, saying we've said enough about Derek Carr, even though he hadn't said anything about Derek Carr, that is a red flag. Something is up. And I could try to connect dots, and I could come out here and yell and scream, and I could talk about how terrible Derek Carr is, and I promise you, the Saints fans that listen terrestrial and radio and that pull up our videos on YouTube and that see our shorts on Instagram, they would all yell and scream and applaud and clap, and they would all love that. I can't get to that level because I just don't know. What I can suggest is it is as odd a fractured relationship and ultimate divorce as I can recall, and I don't know that we're ever going to get the answers. If Derek Carr had never played in the NFL and forfeited $30 million, you would know something was up because nobody goes from nothing to $30 million. It becomes more plausible when you've made $200 to forfeit $30. It still doesn't make a lot of sense because I don't know of anybody that's perfectly willing to forfeit that cash, especially after they have come out and said, hey, would you take a pay cut? Absolutely would not take a pay cut. I just don't know if that one's jiving with me at all. 10 million's good. 30 in addition to that seems better.
Yeah, it's just, I was listening to Off the Bench this morning and Ross Jackson was on and he said, I've interviewed Derek Carr a lot. I've seen him in the locker room plenty of times, talked to him. He's been a very nice guy when I've talked to him. I don't know if he's giving up $30 million nice. That may be a bit excessive to assume that.
And for almost the entirety of the population, that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Not everybody's made $200 million.
Yeah, that's true.
And it just, that puts people in a little bit of a different spot. I mean, there are plenty of guys, like there are plenty of athletes who have like $6 million deals on the table at the twilight of their career. And they're like, no, not doing that. I'm not going to play for them for that. I'm not going to do that. Like David Robertson is a closer who is just out there and he could pitch right now. He pitched good last year and he's a closer that's free agent and he wants like $10 million. The Cubs have talked about, I've heard people say, and they're more willing to go like $3 million. And he's like, I'm not playing for $3 million. And so you're forfeiting. It's like there are some people that are in that position. And I can make the case that Derek Carr's in that position. It's just hard.
It's hard.
And if that was the only thing, then I could explain it away. The Loomis answer about we've already talked about that when they hadn't said anything.
The pay cut thing
and the
last
pay
year.
cut thing from last year, and the fraction, and the Diane Rossini. She didn't just make that up on a podcast. Like, you don't get to that point in sports media just throwing stuff off the wall. There are plenty of people in the quote unquote media that are willing to throw stuff all over the place to get people to click their stuff on YouTube. Diana Rossini's not in that camp.
No,
so
she's not.
it just, the whole thing stinks. And the root of the entire thing and what it's going to ultimately come back to is the Saints are moving on and we don't have to worry about it. But it is a team we cover, and they're not practicing in earnest right now. And it is a story that continues to develop. And when Derek Carr finally speaks for the first time, I think it's relevant to talk about what he had to say. So that's what we've done here. I'm torn. I'm not on Derek Carr's side. I'm not on Joe from the West Bank side who thinks that everything Derek Carr does is the worst thing that's ever been done. I'm somewhere in the middle of that, and I don't know that I'm ever going to be moved off of that because I don't know if we're going to get the actual information that truly suggests what ultimately happened.
Yeah, no matter what, whatever the reason is for this happening, at the end of the day, like you said, look, the Saints are going to be in a much better spot financially because of it, and so. As a Saints fan myself, I'm going to take this situation and just say there's probably something here that we're not going to ever hear about, but if it's going to help the future of the Saints, so I'm just not going to worry about it too much.
It didn't work. He's gone. Money's coming back. Go Saints. All right, we'll talk to Chris Blair, Voice of the Tigers, coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge, genesisofbatonrouge.com is that website. Every car that's on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. If you're looking for a new vehicle, the odds are that one of the key things you're looking at, one of the most important things you're looking at, is safety. What I can promise you about Genesis is that every single model on the line, all of them, have earned the IHA Top Safety Pick, and some of them are Top Safety Picks Plus. From the entry level to the highest end vehicle, all of them start with the same baseline safety features. Now, there are elevations to that, but all of them start award-winning. So that's the most important thing to you when you're looking for a new vehicle. You can be assured that Genesis is going to help you with that. Go chat with one of the brand ambassadors about the safety features. When you get behind the wheel, you'll see all the bells and whistles, how comfortable it is, stylish, how clean, smooth the drive is. The safety is an important deal, and they'll tell you all about it over at Genesis of Baton Rouge. It's on Airline at Pico, across from Women's Hospital. Start your car buying process there, or start it online at genesisofbatonrouge.com. Every single car that's on the lot is online at genesisofbatonrouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Shows brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Beef. It is the summertime, time to get those burgers on the grill, steaks on the grill. There's no better place to get your beef than the prime 45-day aged beef from Sagrera Farms just north of Baton Rouge. I'll be telling you more about it here in a few minutes. They bring you our shows each and every Thursday. Shout out Sean Sagrera and the team over there at Sagrera Farms. Chris Blair, Voice of the Tigers, on the mic into the early morning hours 4 times in a row over the weekend. And we'll play a little bit earlier this weekend. Joins us now, as he does every Thursday, on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Chris, how are you?
I'm good, hon. I hope everybody recovered from what was a wild weekend of college baseball. But, I'll tell you, we all would have, I'm sure, loved to have finished it Sunday night. But, now looking back on it, the way it ended Monday night, the atmosphere, the electricity, the things we saw on the field, makes one of those that you won't forget.
It's a fun time of year, and I think Jay Johnson said something that was very interesting in his post-game after the loss on Sunday. He said, we're 24 hours removed from about as good as we can play. We kind of have forgotten about Friday and Saturday because of Sunday and Monday, but what did you take away from Friday and Saturday, those 2 wins?
Well, it makes me feel good about moving to super regional format play. I'll tell you that, just simply because it was. I mentioned to Jay on Sunday, there's been a number of times this year, particular games, both home and on the road, where, we've kind of talked about it being the best performance of the season. Not perfect, but closer to perfect. And, that's what I said to him, going in on Sunday. I just said, that performance against Dallas Baptist was about as dominant as I've seen in basically every way. And, it was key because when he came back on Monday, if you remember in the press conference after the loss as well, he said it's an opportunity. And credit the Tigers for taking, the moment for that opportunity, even though they got down 5-1 and we all thought we saw this movie already and it sucked. Ethan Fry, Kason Evans, Luis Hernandez, and of course, Jared Jones when they needed it most. I mean, it was just, it's when you look over the body of work, I sound like a broken record, but I've talked about it, peaks and valleys. And goodness knows we can all remember some of the valleys, and LSU did not play well, but I just don't ever count this team out. That's why there's no clock in baseball, and I like the makeup of this team. And as I think I told you prior to first pitch on Monday night, when I went down to the clubhouse for about an hour, you would have not have thought it was a do or die situation being around the coaches and players. I mean, it was very loosey-goosey, and it was clear to me they had put whatever had happened Friday that was good, Saturday that was good, Sunday that was not so good, they'd already put all of that behind them.
And they fell behind 5-1, but they came back on the wings, as it were, of Kason Evans and Ethan Fry. What'd you make of the freshman Kason Evans' performance?
Yeah, it's incredible. To think, we've seen him pitch. It's not that it's surprising he did what he did. It's just in that moment with the stakes that were in play, in that atmosphere where you were, again, waiting to try to get the crowd back into it and give Ethan Fry credit. That shot to right center field was what did it. But to be able to continue that 9 straight strikeouts, retiring the side by way of strikeout 2 innings in a row, those things are legendary. And I know our buddy Todd Politz has been working all week trying to go back. And, he's got those big, huge leather-bound books he digs into. And, 9 strikeouts in a row. You look at the list he's already compiled, pretty impressive.
No doubt. It's crazy to have watched that. It was just what the doctor ordered for LSU. Derek Carr and Stephen Milam busted out over the weekend after some rough patches. What did you see from those two guys, and how important is that for LSU?
Better late than never.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been the thing that had you scratching your head with Milam. Because if you look back to last year, I'm not comparing Carr and Milam. I'm just talking about their maturity in their freshman years. We kept waiting last year for Milam to kind of hit the wall, whether it be defensively or offensively. And then he just kind of picked it up, especially on the offensive end, into postseason play. And then Carr has been outside of a couple of lulls at the end of the year. That's pretty impressive to be able to come into this program with the type of players that are on your team and the type of players you're playing every night to be able to do what they've done in their freshman campaigns. But Jay Johnson told me Monday, Carr is the engine that makes this offense go. And I think that's what he delivered over the weekend. And boy, oh boy, if Stephen Milam continues with what he did at the plate over the weekend, LSU just becomes that much tougher. I have said in that, that big win streak LSU had earlier in the season, it was really hard to find the easy out. Or I should say big gaping holes in the lineup. LSU doesn't have that. And when these guys that we just mentioned are doing their part at the plate, LSU becomes a very, very different and much more difficult team to handle.
How important is the home run ball to this team, specifically at home?
Well, the numbers bear it out. That's another give shout out to Todd Politz. He went back and looked it up. And when you look at LSU over the years, going way back, they usually have the same percentage of home runs, depending on how many they have. If they belt out 130 or they belt out 70, it's pretty even home and away. Hadn't been the case this year. They've had the majority of their home runs hit at home. So again, knock on wood, we're playing regional and super regional play inside Alec Box Stadium. But that's kind of been a disparity this year. If you go back and look at home runs on the road, LSU has not had as many. And goodness knows we played in a couple of tiny parks, or relatively tiny parks. But I think it's huge for LSU. And simply because you've got some guys who find ways to get on base, certainly over the weekend with Carr, with Milam working walks and being able to get base hits. Chris Stanfield has a knack for getting on board. And if you've got Ethan Fry and you got Jared Jones, and now on the back end of that order, you got Luis Hernandez with power in the stick, I think it's huge.
Just puts a jolt into the crowd, and it also sometimes puts a crooked number on that scoreboard, which can be a big, big deal in the home ballpark. Bullpen, Chris, it's been a changing number of guys, and it's great in Hoover, not as good on Sunday. Where are you with those guys right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it still goes to consistency and the lack thereof. We've kind of said that I don't know how many times this year, and I know people don't like hearing it, but they can see it for themselves. There's been moments where you feel like, okay, we found the 4 or 5 guys out of the pen to complement Cade and Anthony in starting roles. And then you come off, weekends like at Auburn, at times against South Carolina, and then certainly this past weekend with the performance on Sunday, 11 walks and 8 of those guys that get aboard find home plate. That's a recipe for disaster. But we still, again, glass half full kind of guy. That's how we all have to be here in postseason play. You have some guys who have the potential to do what you need them to do. Do you feel like they can go out there every single time and do it? Not yet, but there's still time, Hunt. Still time.
There is. They gotta do a good job this weekend, because I don't know that I can expect Anderson and Ianson to give you 2 complete games. Somebody's gonna have to come in there and slam the door. Do you think that Jay will go to Case and Evans at some point, or do you think they kind of save him for a potential Monday game?
It's so weird because you were there in the booth with us before the game. We kept saying, okay, before we saw the lineup, probably go with Zach Cowan. No, you probably go with Kaysen because he's got a couple of starts, and that way you got Zach waiting in the wings if it's not a tremendous performance in a starting role. And then Jay Johnson, who of course knows way more than any of us combined in that room, said, no, we're going to go with Zach, and then we'll lean on Case and Evans if we have to call the fireman. I don't really know. I mean, I think most of us felt like we all did prior to Monday's game. But then after you see what you see, you're like, wait a minute, maybe he does know a little bit more than we do.
Well, let's get out of there early on Saturday and early on Sunday, and then pack bags for Omaha. Sound good to you?
No, absolutely. Let's do it.
We'll see you up there on Saturday afternoon. Thanks, Chris.
You got it.
He's Chris Blair, the voice of the Tigers. Good enough to let me hang out in the back of the radio booth for some portions of the game, depending on how my superstitions are going.
Yeah, Hunt Palmer, the unbiased journalist for LouisianaSports.net.
Not even giving that a thought. Not even trying that persona. I tried that early on in the career. Well, I'm going to be the unbiased journalism, the guy that plays it straight down the middle. I don't have any use for that now. I don't know if this is a time to go on an aside on like my career and what I've decided to do, but it was 2 different aspects of quote unquote journalism that made me open my eyes to go, I can do this the way I want to do it. Scott Van Pelt said on his show, everybody is from somewhere. And to just put that in a closet somewhere is not necessary. You can. There are plenty of journalists that do that. I'm not going to. And then I listened to ESPN Chicago a good bit. And those guys have a great channel up there, and they're just relentless Cubs, Bears, White Sox, Bulls fans, and that's how they operate their shows. And that's how I'm going to do this. I don't have to wear an LSU shirt to the games. I'll spare the press box of that, and I'm not going to yell and scream where the writers are in the press box. But I'm going to fist pump, and I'm going to be excited when LSU does something well. I can still write my story after the game and go to the press conference and not act like a lunatic. But I'm just going to I don't want to sit there behind the laptop anymore and just stare at the field with my hands folded. That's not my personality, and I don't think it's necessary to do the job. There are plenty of sports writers all over the country that can do that, and that's fine. And there are probably a lot of those sports writers and a lot of journalism teachers that I had at LSU that think my way of thinking is the death of journalism. And I'm okay with them thinking that. I don't necessarily think it prevents me from doing my job. I'm here to provide some information, to hopefully provide a little bit of entertainment. And I promise you, when LSU tips the ball off or throws the first pitch or kicks the ball off, I'm going to be locked in and pulling for my alma mater that I've pulled for since I was 6. So that's just the way that's going to be. And if that means my superstition is going to pull me from my seat in the press box to go behind Chris Blair and show a little bit of emotion quietly while they do their radio broadcast, that's what's going to happen. So that's That's where we are. That's Hunt Palmer's career soliloquy.
I kind of wish I could have heard, or not heard, but seen you just going crazy behind Chris Blair.
It's a disaster.
And not, you obviously can't say anything because you don't want to.
Not a word comes out.
Yeah, so because you don't want to accidentally come on one of their microphones. So yeah, that I would wish I could have seen that.
It just is what it is. That's what I am. I am what I am. That's all. Is it Popeye that said that? I am what I am. That's all that I am.
Yes.
That's just the way that goes. Our Thursday shows are brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Beef. I had a great conversation earlier today with my guy, Sean Sagrera. He's so excited. First of all, y'all crushed it Memorial Day. We told y'all they had those 2-pound bags of ground beef, 600 pounds they went through over there at Sagrera Farms. This is a top 1% of beef in the country, and it's right outside of Baton Rouge at Sagrera Farms. And right now, there are 10 animals that are beginning the aging process. 45 days dry aging. At the end, no preservatives, no water, just that unbelievable, tender, flavorful beef. If you'd like to get in line for one of those 10 animals and have Sean cut it for you any way you'd like, then get in line and give him a call. I'm going to give you the cell phone number here in a second. But you got to understand that this is prime beef that is a 36-month journey from start to finish. And these animals have to be born this way. You can't have an animal born and then create this unbelievable, flavorful beef. But Sean and his team have a process down that creates unbelievable consistency and an amazing product. If you want the ground beef, fillets, ribeyes, skirt steaks, flank steaks, all that at Sagrera Farms, top 1% in the country, you need to call this number, 719-1723. 719-1723. Again, they've got 10 animals starting that 45-day aging process. If you would like to get in line for one of those, 719-1723. That is Sagrera Farms. Great piece by The Athletic on a lot of high school recruiting into the NFL draft and where LSU sits right there. We'll talk about that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thanks to Chris Blair for jumping aboard. He'll be on the air Saturday, 12:30 on Eagle 98.1 here in Baton Rouge. Be he, Buzzy Heidel, and Doug Thompson all in the booth for the Super Regional, cranking up LSU in West Virginia. We'll certainly be talking about that a good bit tomorrow. I want to shift gears to football here. And there was a great story that's put out by The Athletic. Manny Navarro wrote it, and it's long. There's a lot of information in it. But I'm going to tailor it towards the LSU side, obviously, for our audience. It's about recruiting as it relates to 4 or 5-star recruits, 3-star recruits, and then what they end up doing in the NFL draft. And I found it fascinating, as I do most of the time when these come out. All of these numbers are from the 24/7 Sports Composite. So they went one place instead of aggregating everything. Now, the composite does do aggregating, but it's not like they're not cherry-picking numbers here. They're just going straight off the 24/7. And so we'll start big picture here. Blue chip recruits still overwhelmingly are drafted higher than the rest of the crew. Even in the transfer portal era, still blue chip recruits are very, very much more likely to be selected. This is taking into account 5 NFL drafts, the last 5. Only 7 players who are not ranked at all in the 24/7 Sports Composite, which is 4%, were taken in the first round of the draft. That only happened 7 times in 5 years. Now, you look at the high-end players, on average, they're like 32 5-stars and somewhere in the draft cycle between 300 to 400 4-star recruits. And you're talking about 5-star recruits make up 26% of the first round. When you consider how few of those there are, that's an astronomical number. It's almost as many as 3-stars, which is 29%. Do you know how many 3-star recruits? Every single recruit that signs with Purdue and Arkansas and Washington State and UCLA and Cal and who, like, they're all 3-stars. And there's 25 5-stars a year, 25 stars a year, and they're almost equal as far as going in the first round. This is undeniable that you still have to have those types of guys. It doesn't dismiss the transfer portal, but I think to completely push away from getting 5-star recruits out of the high school level would be a big, big mistake. Now it goes into the states, and I'm getting to LSU here in a second, but into the states, the most draft picks, Texas, second most Florida, third most Georgia, and fourth most California. Those are always the big four. Population, football, the whole deal, weather. Louisiana's fifth. Louisiana has had more draft picks than the state of Ohio, which really surprised me a little bit. It's by 4. And Louisiana has had 49% of those be blue chip recruits, Ohio 39%. Now, there are more smaller schools in Ohio, and so I think there's some development going on more so at, Akron or Ohio or one of those as opposed to the FCS schools or Tulane or Louisiana Tech. But Louisiana coming in 5th, I think is really impressive. Now, one of the things I wanted to look at is position. I thought that was cool. And I wanted to look at wide receiver first. And they give in the 5-year run, like a school for every position. Alabama's quarterback, Michigan and Texas at running back. And then you go to wide receiver. Ohio State has had 5 first-round picks at wide receiver over the last 5 years. Marvin Harrison and Garrett Wilson went in the top 10. And we haven't gotten to Jeremiah Smith yet, which should be noted. But don't forget about LSU, as the story writes. The Tigers have had 6 receivers taken in the last 5 years. Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas doing the most damage. Justin Jefferson a year beyond that, so we can't add him in. But Chase still involved in Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. So they've got LSU and Ohio State right there at wide receiver U. And there was a time where I thought that the whole DBU moniker was, who cares? Florida, Ohio State, LSU, whatever. But you go and dig more deeply into it, and with the prevalence of social media, that kind of stuff does matter. And it certainly matters when it's the same coaching staff that is recruiting you that handled some of the others. And while Jamar Chase was not here with this staff, Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors certainly were. And so that's an important aspect, especially as Ohio State still has Ryan Day dealing with the entirety of the offense. You want to put yourself in that conversation, and it matters how many guys that you put into the league. And it matters what kind of production you have at the college level. And it certainly matters, state stuff matters as well. And you look at LSU and you consider the state that they're in, which produces the 5th most NFL draft picks, and you look at what they've developed with this staff, and you look at then how important recruiting 4- and 5-star players is, and that's still a big deal. You connect those dots, and that's how you win. You look at the schools that have had the most players drafted. Here it is. Georgia, number 1, 2 national championships. Bama, number 2, competed for national championships. Michigan, number 3, won a national championship. Ohio State, number 4, won a national championship. Number 5, LSU. So you're in the club here. You're in the club with Georgia, with Bama, with Michigan, with Ohio State, with Penn State and Texas, who are right behind you. So yeah, you've not lived up to the expectation that you should have. You have not won as many games as you should have. But you're doing the thing that matters the most when it comes to winning championships. And I don't mean that in a binary sense. I mean it in a general sense. You cannot win a national championship if you are not on this list. If you are not recruiting the most 4- and 5-stars, if you are not putting the most players in the NFL draft, you cannot win a championship. And LSU, though they have not contended with Georgia and with Ohio State and with Michigan since 2019, they're doing this, which will ultimately lead you to that path. There is a reason why Mississippi State is not on any of these lists. There is a reason why Kansas State is not on any of these lists. I haven't mentioned Texas A&M either. I haven't mentioned Tennessee either. This is what's important. And there's a reason when Tennessee, generally speaking, goes and plays Georgia, they get their teeth kicked in. They don't have the dudes yet. There's a reason now that Texas has shown resurgence. because they're now 7th in the last 5 drafts in putting out NFL talent. And now Sark's got it cooking with the recruiting. You've got to get in the portal. You've got to get upperclassmen. And LSU did that this year, and you have to do that. But you've got to go recruit those high school guys, get them through, and get them to the NFL. Because trying to restock all the shelves every single year is going to be too volatile. And all of these metrics that this athletic piece points to, LSU is pointing in the right direction. Yes, it's wide receiver. But yes, it's quarterback as well. Yes, it needs to be secondary, where Corey Raymond is starting to pick up all those 4- and 5-star recruits. DJ Pickett is here now. And you've got to do it on the defensive line. You've got to do it on the offensive line. And you feel like you've got the guys in place to make that happen. LSU as a football program has not reached where it needs to be in the last 5 years. But they're doing the thing that is the greatest indicator of getting back to where they need to be. And that is a very, very encouraging thing from this story on The Athletic. All right. That's your LSU football. If you're looking for LSU football content, hunt on LSU on YouTube or wherever you find your podcast. Our Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms. We'll come back and close it out next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Look, closet space may not be front of mind for you, but maybe it is. Don't have a great spot. I didn't when I moved into my first house. My wife came along a few years later. She's like, what? Where am I supposed to put all my stuff? It's like, well, just find a closet. I don't know. Well, that's not a great answer, turns out. So we had clothes in the attic, in other rooms, in the hallway closet. It was bad. We moved. We knew we were going to move when the second baby came, so we moved, and we handled the closet situation in that way. You don't have to move to do that. Let David Duvall and his team come in and put in a brand new closet. Let them come in and use the space in your current closet more efficiently. They're a licensed contractor. They can do the big, dirty work. They can do something simple and customized. Just depends on what's in your budget and what your needs are. Start that process with the consultation. Just starts with the questionnaire. How many pairs of shoes you got? How many people live here? Winter coat, how many suits you got? And once you've got the measurements down, he can put that magic touch on all of it. Go to the website. See the pictures of his great work. It's functional and it's gorgeous. And I can promise you this, they'll do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's One Bath and Closets. Check them out online, onebathandclosets.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Up here on a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. It's been a great one. Thanks to Chris Blair for a little bit of time. Thanks to, do we have another guest? Yeah, we did. We had Joe Healy.
Yeah.
Good conversation. Always enjoy talking to Joe about some SEC baseball. I feel like I have to make a pick right now on Arizona, North Carolina, because by the time I come on tomorrow, they will be 2 hours into their baseball game from Chapel Hill. I like the Tar Heels. I think they're very good. I think they hit the crap out of the ball last weekend. Y'all remember that third baseman Gallagher from last year? He was bashing the baseball against Oklahoma over the weekend. Arizona played great out west in Eugene, but I will take the number 5 seed North Carolina Tar Heels to win tomorrow and probably win that one in 2.
Wonder who Jay Johnson would pick in that game.
I think he would he has a pretty good knowledge of what North Carolina is.
He does.
I doubt he knows as much about Arizona.
He's going to probably pick Arizona.
Yeah, well, I think he probably wants Arizona to win.
Yeah.
But I think he might pick North Carolina because he watched them last year, and they're pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Presented to you by Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer, crafted by America's oldest brewery. Today's hottest stories in sports, news, and sometimes even Hunt's life. The question is, will he take them or leave them?
All right.
I got to do the Yingling Flight lead,
here's the
bro.
thing. Here's the thing. I didn't do it the first two times. I was okay.
You were.
But it's hard for me to remember.
Get in the routine.
I gotta remember it.
Flight by Yingling, next generation of light beer. Going to be real toasty out there in the parking lot for Alec Box Stadium over the weekend. If you're looking for a cold, refreshing summertime beer, no better beer than Yingling Flight. 2.6 carbs, 95 calories. Perfect for tailgates, game days, or even just winding down after work. I'm going to be on the grill tomorrow night after work. We'll have baseball on as well. Going to have a Yingling Flight by Yingling handy. So go check them out. Flight by Yingling, the next generation of light beer.
All right, first one. As we were coming to the top of this hour, or maybe it's the bottom of this hour, Pittsburgh Steelers are apparently going to be signing Aaron Rodgers. A lot of sources, league sources, Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, all of the usual suspects are reporting this, that Aaron Rodgers will be signing a 1-year deal with the black and yellow. According to multiple, I already said that.
Yep.
I was reading it. Yep. This is what happens. Ron Burgundy reading teleprompter.
Here's where you say take it or leave it.
This will go well. Take it or leave it.
I'll leave it, but it's still the right thing to do. Like, you're not going to win with what you had with the Fields-Wilson deal. Like, that's not going to get it done. Rodgers gives you a chance. It's an outside chance, but it's a chance. It's a 1-year deal. If it doesn't work, go back to the drawing board and figure something out.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. They had their long run with Roethlisberger. I still think they got a great coach, and the roster's okay. Rodgers gives you a chance. It's like Favre gave the Vikings a chance. Peyton gave the Broncos a Super Bowl. Like, it gives you a shot, and it may not work, but it's worth trying.
I guess so. I just kind of feel like it's not similar, obviously, but I kind of feel like the Steelers are sort of in the semi-similar position to the Saints were before. Okay, I know Aaron Rodgers he has a much better track record than Derek Carr, but I don't know that the Steelers really Aaron Rodgers away from the Super Bowl.
I doubt it, but because their division's brutal too. But they've got a way better coach than the Saints had, and a better organization and a better roster, and he's a higher ceiling player than Derek Carr. So, again, I don't think it's going to work, but it's worth a shot.
I would probably agree somewhat, but moving on here, last one, billionaire private equity investor Justin Ishbia, brother of Phoenix Suns owner Matt Ishbia, is in line to be the next owner of the Chicago White Sox, but not so fast. Of course, Jerry Reinsdorf is not going to let it go that quickly. Apparently, Ishbia will not be taking over ownership until at least 2029, and then potentially going to until 2034. It seems that it may just be until Jerry kicks the bucket, because he is 90 years old, so he doesn't have too much time left on planet Earth here. But Ishbia,
that's very kind of you.
Look, Jerry Reinsdorf, not exactly the most. He had.
I don't mean to laugh. That's not a laughing matter. But he's 89 years old. So yes, I understand where you're coming from.
Well, and also, a lot of White Sox fans. I'm not a White Sox fan, but I can understand their tepidness with him.
Well, he's an atrocious owner.
Yes,
he's a terrible owner.
But the White Sox will become relevant again under Ishbia's ownership. Take it or leave it.
Take it for sure.
I'll take it.
That's what it takes in baseball. The Mets instantly became relevant and better once they got rid of the Wilpon ownership group and got Steve Cohen, and he spent a bunch of money. That's what it takes in baseball. You think NIL is powerful in football? You can go do it in Major League Baseball too. And they got way more money to spend, and they can do it right over the table. So, that's the difference. Chicago is a destination city, and if you spend a bunch of money, you can get a lot of people to go play there. Is it the little brother in town? Yes, it is. Can you change that pretty quickly? Mets are doing okay. So, Reinsdorf, this sounds ridiculous coming from me. He's not rich enough to own a Major League Baseball team. That sounds ridiculous to me, the little salaried, overweight guy in Baton Rouge, but he doesn't have enough money. So if he owns the team and they don't spend $100 million on anyone ever, they're never going to win. And that's why last year they were the worst team in the history of the sport. You have to have money, and he doesn't have enough. So, the Ishbia guy? Yeah, he does. So, White Sox will be good. It'll just probably take 6-7 years until Jerry's done. All right, that's it for a Thursday edition brought to you by Sagrera Farms. If you missed any, catch it on demand. So pumped up for tomorrow's show. We'll get you our final preview for LSU and West Virginia. Matt's going to drive you home next on AFR. We will see you tomorrow, same time, same place, for a Friday edition of Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.